New report showing US Latino GDP reaching $4 trillion. It's about the same size as India. If ranked as a world economy, it would come in at number 5. The results are based on 2023 data from the Latino Donor Collaborative. Sol Trujillo is here. He's the chairman of the Latino Donor Collaborative and founder of the Trujillo Group. He joins us with part 1 of the report. More data is going to be released this fall. Let's talk about the data we know about, but I'm also curious, maybe you'll tease us about what you think the next component part of this is all about.
Well, good morning. First of all, thank you for having me. The story is always a continuing story, and if I were to make one bet for the United States of America as a core component that's going to grow for the next 3 or 4 decades, it's this part of our economy. It's today 65 million people. By the end of this decade, it'll be almost 78 million people. And just a quick factoid for everybody here. Guess what percentage of total young people, 18 years or younger, that are Latinos in the country are native born?
I'm sorry, phrase it again. What percentage of Latinos
are native born that are 20?
It's going to be a 18. Very high number. Super high.
You got it. 95%.
Wow.
And 80% of the people that are here that are Latino last named are basically, with documents, et cetera.
Okay, you bring that up because this has been a big question, a turn in where the country has come at this point. The numbers, I've been watching you for years, Sol. Take a look at the numbers, and they have exploded.
Right.
And what we see with this has gone up and up and up. I guess your point with this is that's going to continue. There's nothing that's going to stop this. Yeah,
and the big point is that you just had General Motors on.
Right.
And I was listening to the interview. We're going to show in September at our new event called Velocity, we're going to show data, benchmark data, that shows the magnitude of this cohort, this $4 trillion, and all the workers that are there as consumption. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure that we always talk, we tend to talk about tariffs, we tend to talk about a lot of things that you have to deal with every day. But at the end of the day, this is a 2/3 consumption-based economy. So you need people buying things.
Yeah. So my question to you is, if demographics are destiny, what does this mean in terms of the kinds of products that you think somehow the Latino community is more inclined to buy, the spaces with which they're more inclined to work? I don't know if you break it down like that, yes, or think about it like that, but if you do, what does that mean for every business leader and investor out there that's saying, okay, I'm seeing what you're saying, but how do I think about that in practice?
Yeah, I don't want to pick on companies per se, but if you look at, for example, the story of Budweiser beer, iconic brand for 100 plus years, and now they're the number 2, maybe moving to number 3 kind of sales, volume sales. And there's a Mexican brand called Modelo beer.
Mm-hmm. But Bud was kind of self-inflicted with some of the damage.
Well, some of that was, but it's really who they focus on as the consumer.
Right.
And so, when I was in college, I drank beer.
Right.
I don't really drink beer anymore. I don't drink anything. But my point is that you have to go with how, the cohorts in our country are. This cohort is the youngest cohort by a lot. And so, a couple of years ago, we were talking about the most populated age for the Latino cohort was 11.
Right.
The most populated age for the Anglo-American cohort was 58.
So here's a different question, though.
But this is about business.
No, I get it. But here's my question. We just talked about General Motors.
Yes.
And are we talking about how a company markets their product to a different group of people? Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about the product itself?
Well,
and then people will start to get into, why are we discriminating or targeting one demographic versus another? I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah. So just as a context, as you know, I've run businesses on every continent in the world minus one, the coldest one. So I've done business everywhere. And I'm a believer in segmentation, right? It's really segmentation. And if somebody says, well, if you're going to segment, that's DE&I, and you shouldn't be doing that, or it's discriminatory, I'd say you don't know anything about business. Business is about finding the customers that have the money, that have the interest, that you can tap into the interest, et cetera. And also the talent in companies that can help nurture that growth. So, for example, in the automotive sector, you will see that over time, the Japanese car makers have been the market share takers in the United States? And as we would say, ¿y sabes por qué? Or in French, you'd say, pourquoi? And the answer is because they're focusing on a cohort that fits the profile of who they think their consumer should be, et cetera. If you look at beer, the younger cohort is the Latino cohort. It's not about Anglo cohort is bad or Asian cohort is bad or anything like that. This is about business. This is my message to every CEO I talk to, and whenever I have a chance to talk about this, we need to understand the consumption part of our economy and the fact that we have a growth cohort. So here's part of the punchline. The US Latino cohort is our nation's differentiation as a competitive entity versus Europe, fading, versus China now because of the single-child policy, fading. Japan is our historical example, fading. And there's one country outside of India, which is just a young growth country. This cohort is a buoy for
so here's my next question.
But back to your original question, is this the products that you make, or is it the marketing, to Andrew's original question on that? Do you market it differently, or do you actually make products that are different?
It's a little bit of a combination of both. Because I remember giving a speech in Silicon Valley in 1999 when AOL was the #1 market cap company. And I was saying it's going to fade because of a lot of the things that have happened. And I said, but just to show you, at that point in time, salsa was outselling ketchup and mustard. And we have lots of examples of how that's happening now. Tacos outselling, whatever. And it's because of consumptive patterns, but it's also focus.
Let me ask you about politics. When you think about this cohort, can you wrap this cohort in one political bow? And how is that going to impact the politics of America over the next however many years? How does that cohort think about tariffs? And by the way, the impact on some of you just said 95% of them are born in America, so maybe they don't think about what's happening in so many of the other countries with which their parents or grandparents may have been born. But how does that engage this group that you're talking about?
Yeah. In our country today, take the Jewish cohort. There are affinities there with the Jewish community in terms of products, companies that they do business, and all that sort of thing. The Asian cohort, there are certain affinities that they have. And the Latino cohort is no different, African American cohort. So my point is that smart marketing is always, I want to know your need set, I want to understand them, and then serve them better than anybody else. So politically speaking, the Latino cohort has evolved. And the story I told before, I don't know if you remember when I was talking to Joe last time, 1/3 of the Latino cohort families own businesses, right? So they do care about taxes. They do care about regulation. I'm a registered Republican. I didn't support this guy who's president today because I think he's not building kind of what I would call long-term growth prospects. But that's an opinion of mine. I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm just here to say, as a country, we should value this cohort, nurture the cohort, and for brands, they should be leveraging the cohort. And that's what the GDP, the Latino Donor Collaborative, it's a nonprofit. I started it when I came back from Australia to say all this negative conversation makes no sense because this is a crown jewel that we have in our country.